everything goes right as it should.
Right. Is
Okay.
it archived on your website?
Yeah, it'll
I
be
mean,
sure,
okay.
absolutely. Okay. Hi everybody. This is Steve Sabludowski, publisherbodybuzz.com. We've been talking politics this morning, and now we're going to be talking sports and something I think even we're going to be talking about Tom Benson, the man, by with Jim Miller, the former executive vice president of the New Orleans Saints, and who is an incredible writer as far as I'm concerned. You can see the books behind him. Good morning, Jim. How you doing today?
I'm doing great, Steve. Thanks for the plug.
Oh, well, thank you. And first of all, why don't you tell us about, so you were executive vice president for the New Orleans Saints. Also, you
Correct.
were with the Bears and the, well, anyway,
Buffalo Bills. I was,
Bills,
yeah, I
right?
left
Bills,
New Orleans
Bears.
to go to
And,
the Bills for 2 years, and then the Bears for three.
okay,
And then we came back, and the UNO job, athletic director's job, opened up, and I was UNO AD for 7 years, which was a fun job.
right. And also, you were vice president with the NFL, am I correct?
Well, no, I was the information director for
Okay.
the NFL Management Council, which was the labor relations arm, and for 5 years, and we were the office that negotiated the collective bargaining agreement with the Players Association. So that was a great training ground, and from there, I got to know Jim Finks pretty well, and then he brought me down to New Orleans in 1986, and that's when
Gotcha.
I met Tom Benson.
So let's see. Let me just look online and make sure that we are live online. It looks like just want to make sure. Yes, we are. Okay, great. Okay, so uh, were you surprised about the news from yesterday?
Well, I had heard in the last week that Mr. Benson wasn't doing quite as well as the public reports had painted the picture, and that it might be a matter of days. So I think people who were close to the situation were prepared for it. But you lose a valued member of the community and of your family, basically. You're never prepared for that. But what he leaves behind is a great legacy and certainly great personal memories as well.
Absolutely. Now, there's a lot of people who have expressed their sorrow. A lot of people for, I guess, former players for the Saints who have tweeted various things, and I'm just wondering, is there one thing that you can say about your experience with Tom Benson that you really want to get out there?
Well, I'm going to put all my thoughts from the last 18 hours on my website, jwmillersports.com, later this morning. But in short, the what I'd like people to know about Tom was his great integrity, his passion for success, his passion to be successful and to lift his employees, to challenge his people, anybody around him, to try to equal his level of passion and success. And that took many forms, especially in the early years. It's funny that occasionally I've seen Mickey Loomis on the golf course, and Mickey and I will laugh about the Tom Benson I knew against versus the Tom Benson he worked for. And the Tom Benson I knew was the new NFL owner who really didn't know what he didn't know yet, but who was bright enough to hire people that did know it. And his best hire was general manager Jim Finks, who hired me, hired Jim Mora, hired Billy Q. Herrick, hired all of us who worked hard at turning around the image of the Saints, which I think we did, to Tom's credit.
So let's see. Let me go back. When did Tom Benson actually say become the owner of the New Orleans Saints?
He was the owner. He bought the team in May, I think May 31st, 1985, and it was just before the 85 season. Bum Phillips was still coach, And he went through that season, and toward the end of the season, that's when he made the change. With about 4 games to go, he released Bum of his duties, hired his son Wade Phillips, who was an assistant, as the temporary head coach, and then cleaned out the front office, and we came aboard shortly thereafter.
Okay. In terms of Tom Benson, the man, you talk about, his passion. He didn't have much football knowledge or sports knowledge, did he? I hear that he did not.
No, I think you're exactly right. What Tom had was a passion for New Orleans, and when John Meekum Jr., the old owner, made it known that he wanted to put the team up for sale, there weren't a whole lot of local people that stepped up to the plate. There were a lot of people elsewhere who tried to convince Pete Rozelle, the commissioner, that they'd come in, they'd buy the Saints. But when you get a person from Los Angeles or from St. Louis or from points east, west, north, and south, they're probably going to buy a team and take it to New York or St. Louis or Jacksonville, and that was a very serious and very real threat in those days in 1985. Until Tom Benson stepped up. He was a member of an investor group that was interested, but he didn't intend to be the guy. It just evolved that way. That once when the membership group was put together, I think he only owned about 9% of that membership group, but the membership group owned 37%, which was the majority partnership. And so he was his business acumen was so high that he created, if you guys want me to run it, I'll run it, but here's what we're going to do. He created kind of an Al Davis scenario in Oakland, whereas Davis didn't have very much of the team initially. He had a very small percentage of the team, but he created what was called a managing general partnership that gave him total control. And that's what Tom did. He created a managing general partnership that gave him total control. And it also allowed him within a period of I believe 8 years to, if he chose to do it, he'd buy out the other owners, which is exactly what happened. He paid, his group paid $72 million for the team. And in 1993, he bought them out at a rate of $93 million. And I think that shows you how fast the Saints were appreciating. And it also showed something in the fact that some of the investors balked because they thought the price should have been higher. But after 93, Tom owned 100% of the team and had the total control in fact as well as in contract.
So what was your role when your first year when you joined Finks?
My role at the management council, after we negotiated a new collective bargaining agreement in 1982, my role was as club liaison. I would talk to all the clubs, people at the clubs with regard to the collective bargaining agreement and player contracts. And I had a great feel, or I acquired a great feel on how to put together a contract, what should be in a contract, what should not be in a player contract. And I think I brought that to the table. And when I came to the Saints in the summer of '86, I was basically Jim Finks and I did most of the contracts. Jim did the bigger ones. I did the not so bigger ones. Billy Kuharic did a lot of free agent contracts, but primarily I was a contracts negotiator as well as the vice president of administration, and which meant that all the front office departments reported to me. All the department heads reported to me, and we had staff meeting. We had weekly staff meetings of all the department heads. Jim Finks was there, and so that was to ensure that not only did we have a smooth running football operation, but we had a smooth running front office operation. And to give you an example of how well and how quickly we came along in from 1986 when Jim Finks and the rest of us came aboard. In 1989, there was a new owner in the league who didn't know much about football. Well, he knew about football, but he didn't know about owning an NFL team. And so he called Tom Benson and asked, "Can he said, your organization is viewed right now as one of the best run in the league. So would you mind if I came over and brought my coach and some people over to talk to your executives?" So that's how I met Jerry Jones. Jerry Jones got his basic education from Tom Benson and from Jim Finks, and we sat in a meeting for an entire day. And I'll never forget that Jimmy Johnson, the coach then, he would have much rather been on the golf course, but Stephen Jones, Jerry's son, was in the meeting all day and asked good questions. And so that was really kind of a testament to how well the Saints were operating and were perceived in the league, and that's all to Tom Benson's credit.
Absolutely. I mean, how did he acquire Jim Finks? I mean, Finks had done some almost worked miracles with the Bears, with the Vikings. I mean, how did he get Finks?
That's a good story because Jim Finks in 1983, he left the Bears and interestingly enough, joined the Chicago Cubs for a year. And he always kind of took the Midas touch with him because the Cubs went to the playoffs in '84 and they thought they were going to, get to the series that year. That took a few more years, but after a year at the Cubs, he left and didn't. I guess for whatever reason he left. But what happened was he worked with Hill and Knowlton, which was forming an advisorship program for professional sports, and they were a publishing wing, and they had a lot of different business irons in the fire, but they wanted to get into professional sports, and they hired Jim as their point guy. Well, Jim did that for a while, and in the interim, in 1985, we hired him as a consultant to help us plan the next round of collective bargaining, which was going to occur in 1987. So that's where Jim and I got to be very close and started working together very close at the NFL office. Well, when I'll never forget, in December of 1985, I got a call from Pat Pepler, who was the personnel guy with the Saints at the time, and he asked me, he said, "Well, guess who just got fired?" And I said, "Who?" He said, "Me, Eddie Jones, Bum Phillips, the whole group." And so I walked right into my boss's office, a guy named Jack Donlin, who was the chief negotiator in collective bargaining for the league. And I said, "Hey, they just cleaned out the new owner just cleaned out the house in New Orleans. You think Jim Finks would be interested?" Now, I'm not taking credit for that. I'm just saying that right. I think it was reflective that Finks was in everybody's mind the most logical guy. Right. So Donlin picked up the phone, called Benson right there, and it was about two or 3 weeks later that Jim Finks was hired. So that's how we got here, basically.
Right, gotcha. By the way, I do see that there. Let me make that correction. We just did something. Your name tag was wrong, so we just corrected that. I do apologize.
No.
Yeah. We just did a show right before you with Rob Maness, mm-hmm. and so
yeah.
No, Rob hadn't changed any, nor have you.
That's good.
Really,
thank you.
Really, but thank you. So. You have to wonder how and this kind of deals with the issue of the question I asked before, but you really have to wonder how in the world can a person without any kind of sports knowledge, any football knowledge, any NFL knowledge, just come in there and really turn things around. So was it that he just knew how to, I mean, initially knew how to pick the right people? And Finks.
Oh, I think that, yeah, no question. I think that's a talent that top executives have. They don't necessarily know how a widget is put together, but they hire the best people who know how to put the widgets together. And I think that was what Tom did. We had a saying in the NFL, which is probably very widely spread, but the smartest guy you ever met is the guy who's smart enough to know what he doesn't know. And that was Tom Benson. But he knew the NFL, and he knew the importance of the NFL to New Orleans. And that's what underlies everything that I think that Tom's done over the years, is that he does it. He's no fool. He did it for profit, obviously, and he was very successful at that. But his bottom line, if you will, was his passion for New Orleans. And he bought the Saints. He built that up. He's been a tremendous benefactor to the Catholic Church, to the Archdiocese, and elsewhere. He saved the Pelicans basically, right, by purchasing them from George Shinn a few years ago. And so I think everything he's done really has been to just to enhance New Orleans, to do things for the betterment of New Orleans and Louisiana. Mm-hmm. And a footnote there is, when we came aboard, Tom told us to change all the stationery, and it was no longer the New Orleans Saints, but it would be the New Orleans, Louisiana Saints. And so he felt that New Orleans shouldn't, or the Saints were not just a city franchise, they were a regional franchise. And we had PR caravans in the off season where Jim Mora, Jim Finks, me, Billy Q. Herrick, players, other coaches, we'd load up in three Winnebagos, and we'd go to the three points of the calendar. One went north to Jackson and Shreveport and Alexandria, and then one went west to Houma, Baton Rouge, Lake Charles. Another one went east to Biloxi, Mobile, and those areas. And it was just to spread the fact that the Saints were a regional franchise, and that's what Tom envisioned. He envisioned a regional franchise, and the only downside of that is one time I had to drive a Winnebago, and drive it across the Huey Long Bridge. So unless you've ever done that, that's an experience that you don't want to repeat. But that was all Tom's plan to make sure that the region and the state and knew that, hey, this is your team. This is not just New Orleans' team. And I think he did a very good job of that.
So I'm putting up a tweet right now. Unfortunately, you can't see it, but everybody else can. And so I'll read it. This is from Scott Kushner. And Scott writes, by many accounts, Tom Benson saved professional football and basketball in New Orleans by purchasing the Saints in 1985 and the Pelicans in 2012. There were some public spats and ugly disputes along the way, but it's likely these franchises would be elsewhere if not for him. And obviously that's what you're saying.
Exactly. No, that Scott's very perceptive. I think that he makes a great point that if it wasn't for Tom Benson initially standing tall in 1985 and rallying a group of investors and agreeing to be the point guy, the Saints probably would not be here. And obviously, if the Saints weren't here, then the Pelicans might have come anyway, but they might be gone as well. So no, I think Tom deserves a tremendous amount of credit, and that's his legacy. The Saints and the Pelicans, I think they're in stable hands. Mrs. Benson, I think from what I understand, she's going to keep the management team in place, which is again alluding back to Tom being smart enough to know what he doesn't know. So I think the team in the future, the team is secure.
So, referring to that, Nick Underhill has tweeted, "Here's what I've been told about what happens next. The Saints and Pelicans are on solid ground. They are not selling. They are not moving. Gail Benson has been approved by both leagues. The transition will be seamless since Tom Benson set it up and planned for this." Well, if Tom Benson didn't know much about football or NFL or say a franchise, what about his wife? I mean, obviously she has a little bit more experience being with Tom.
Well, again, it goes back to the fact that that good people are in place to run it. She doesn't have to know the elements of a red dog defense or a cover two, but she does rely on the staff that Tom put together: Mickey Loomis, Sean Payton. You've got the personnel guys. Dennis Lauscha, the president of the team, is a very, very bright guy. Dennis was when I was with the team, Dennis was one of our Arthur Andersen auditors. So I've known Dennis a long time, and he does a great job. He's very bright. And again, I think that he's a New Orleans guy. He's ingrained in the city. And I think Gail relies on those people, and to her credit as well, she took that from Tom, and that gives me great comfort that the team's going to be here for a long, long time. Both teams.
Here's another tweet that I just put up. Drew Brees: "I will forever be indebted to Mr. Tom Benson for believing in me and giving me the opportunity." What a story! I mean,
Absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely. You can't say that around the league, because there are players that don't like owners. And this is not just football. This is all sports. There are players that don't like their owner. They don't think their owner is doing what he can to improve the team or help the team, or even care much about the players. And I think that Tom, over the years, it showed that he did care. He wanted this to be a family. You're stronger when you're a family than when you've got disparate opinions around the office and in the locker room. But the outpouring of love from Drew Brees and Zach Strief and Cameron Jordan and all these guys who you've seen come forward in the last 18 hours, I think it's been terrific. And I think that certainly goes to your point that he was loved by the players, and they owe him a lot, and they understand that.
I'm going to put this one up. This is from Donte Stallworth. I'm just going to. It says, "Even after I was traded, he kept in touch, and years later would check in on me and offer help during the difficult time. I am forever grateful." I mean,
yeah, that's that. I understand. No, I understand that, and that same thing happened to me basically when in 1996 when Tom saw that he needed to make a change. He made the change, and Jim Mora left shortly after I did, but a year later, after I'd gotten to Buffalo, Tom had called the owner of the Bills and recommended me for a position. And I saw him at a league meeting, and I've written this, but Tom told me he wanted to apologize for letting me go, because he said I made a mistake. I shouldn't have let you go. And I said, "Tom, you don't have to say that. I appreciate it, but he said but that's how I feel. I just wanted you to know." And it takes a big man to do that. But like Donte tweeted, he said that hey, he let me go. I didn't like it, but we kept in touch, and that shows, I think, the character and integrity of Tom Benson.
He also let some other people go. I mean, he let Bobby Hebert go, Morten Andersen go. I mean, the argument is that he's a tough player. He's tight with his money.
Well, those are two different issues. I think Tom wasn't the guy per se who let Morten Andersen, Ricky Jackson, and all these guys go. That's when the early days of the salary cap, when we just couldn't afford those players, and they were quote declining. They obviously weren't declining as much as we thought, but again, that was a football decision. The football people made that decision. I was involved in that as well, and but Tom endorsed it because he said, it's time. He agreed with us that it was time to go in another direction, and every decision you make is based on the elements and facts you have at the time. You can look back and say, well, boy, what an idiot decision letting go Morten Andersen or Bobby Hebert or Ricky Jackson. Well, you look back and hindsight's 20/20. But at the time, Tom endorsed those decisions because in our knowledge and that was the best for the team at the time.
I probably made those comments, by the way, and also Jimmy Graham. I thought that was idiotic. But
yeah, well, I'm not sure. I think that was a pretty good move, only because a tight end in a football matter is seen as kind of a luxury, and for the money that they would have had to actually he got the contract. But the fact that they had a chance to improve a key position, which was center with an all-pro, which they did, which is right. Unger's been a great addition. And they got a first rounder, which didn't turn out so well, and Stephon Anthony. But the point is that with Drew Brees and Sean Payton's offense, a tight end, you could stick a tight end out there, stick a wide receiver out there, stick a Lance Moore out there. There will always be guys on the receiving end. And although Graham in his prime was as good or better than most tight ends that ever played, that sometimes that position is a luxury. But, I'm sure Tom didn't want to do it, but it was a good football decision, which the football people recommended. And as another footnote, when I was there, any decision that we ever made to improve the team or to sign a big money free agent or to do something that Tom might not have done on his own, he endorsed every decision. He never stood in the doorway at all. And again, you mentioned the fact that Tom Benson is always seen as a tight-fisted guy. Well, he got that reputation in the car business. It was tough to negotiate a car deal with Tom Benson or one of his salesmen, and I know that. But you've got to have a guy running the business who knows the value of a dollar, and Tom certainly did. But when it got to the Saints, it was almost the opposite, because he looked at us for the knowledge that hey, we know the ins and outs of this new business that you've never been in, and sometimes you've got to spend money to make money. And so he became very educated very quickly, and I don't think he ever stood in the way of any of his so-called experts who recommended that they spend money on something that would improve the team.
You really have to marvel, over the incredible success of a self-made man. Obviously I saw on TV yesterday that there was a story where he sat in front of St. Aloysius, and I think on the sidewalk, and somebody came up to him from the school asking what he was doing, and he says, well, I just wanted to go to the school, and he was given a scholarship. You have to really wonder, what is in a person's gut, mind, blood, whatever, to really make such an incredible impact, both just economically, financially, but also civically. What was it that, you mentioned passion, but what was it about Tom Benson? Did he just have incredible ability with numbers, or? Well, he was certainly a financial whiz. If you anybody who would just talk to Tom Benson, you'd never and not know who he was, you would never guess that he was as adept financially.
as he was. I mean, he knew the numbers backwards and forwards. But I think it goes back to passion. That might seem like a cliche, but it goes back to passion and character and heart. You know, they say in the NFL that you can measure how fast a guy runs, how well he catches a football, how well he throws a football, but you can't measure heart. And that's why so-called surefire first rounders, some of them don't make it because they just don't have the heart. They don't have the passion. And I think Tom had the heart. He had the heart. He had the passion. He had the knowledge, the numbers. He knew the numbers backwards and forwards. And he knew enough, again, to hire people who were better than he was in certain areas, or smarter than he was in certain areas. You know, somebody once said that, well, Tom Benson hires people who dress better than he does, who talk better than he does, who are smarter in some areas than he is, but they are all making money for Tom Benson. Right. And so that, I think, puts it in a nutshell.
Is there a story that you can tell us that you haven't told or that you'd like to tell us regarding Tom Benson, you know, personal experience that you had? Oh,
there are a bunch of them.
Right.
I was trying to resurrect a few for my website today.
Sure.
I came down to images that, and some of them are very popular. Obviously, the man in the parasol dancing around the field after a game, waving the parasol. That's an image that you know. And another image was road trips the night before a game. Tom traveled with an entourage. There were about a dozen people, and some of his very closest friends, and they would always convene in Tom's suite and play bourrée and the card game, the Cajun card game, and Tom loved to beat his buddies out of a couple bucks, and the image. Of course, we were all invited. I don't think Jim Moore ever came, but Billy Kuharich and Jim Finks were there many times. But just the image of him, you know, taking a couple bucks from one of his old buddies, that meant as much to him, and he would laugh and have a great time. Another image was when in 1993, when we were trying to negotiate a new lease for the Superdome, and Tom wanted to build suites, and he couldn't make any headway with the people in Baton Rouge. So he said, "Come on, we're going to go see the governor." So Tom and I think Greg Suit, who was our PR and marketing guy, we went up there to the governor's office, and just to see. I mean, Tom talked to Edwin Edwards like a stable hand. I mean, he was pounding his fist on the table or on Edwards' desk, and he was raising his voice, and he was telling him, you know, why, you know, this is important to this city. This is important. You know, I can't compete with the other owners in the league who have better leases and all this. And he was really, really animated. I don't think I ever saw him as quite as animated as that. Maybe one other time, which I'll tell you. But Edwards just was sitting back there with his feet on his desk, just very casual, very cool. And at the end, he started laughing. He said, "That was a great performance, Benson, but you'll get everything you want. So, but just calm down, okay? Just calm down." So that was a great image. Another image, which wasn't so pleasant for some of us, it was in 1995 when the Saints started out 0-5, and Tom called me, Billy Kuharich, and Jim Moore into his office, and said, "If you guys can't straighten this thing out, I can." And he threatened to fire people left and right, and told us to go back and you pick certain 3 people to get rid of, and you do this and you do that, and you cut some players and you get rid of coaches. And it took us about 3 hours to calm him down and talk him down off the ceiling. Wow. But he was kind of desperate at that point, because all of a sudden, you know, he's known nothing but success, and all of a sudden, you know, we're 0-5 and we're at the bottom of the barrel in the league, and and he's got to do something. So I'll never forget that.
Was that with Mike Ditka?
No. I wasn't here with Ditka. No, I was here just with Jim Moore. You know, in fact, okay. I left the team in the spring of '96, and Jim Morrow left during the '96 season. No, Billy Kuharic was involved in the Mike Ditka thing, and that. Yeah, but I really cannot speak to that directly because I wasn't here.
Absolutely. Okay, let's change gears. And number one, you're writing a column and you put it up on your blog, which is it's jwmillersports.com. Am I correct?
Correct.
And we'll put it up on Bayou Buzz, as we love putting up your. I love reading your columns. I just think that you're terrific. As I've told you, many times. Now behind you, behind you have those two pictures, and those are the two books that you've written. One is about University of New Orleans, and one is about University of Kentucky.
Well, it's no, the one over my left shoulder is it's called Integrated, and it's about African American high school basketball in the era of desegregation. It was published by the University Press of Kentucky.
Okay,
but it's a great look. Yeah, it's a great look at the transition period when a lot of African American schools and people who love their institutions, they were going to be closed, and there was a great outcry in the African American community of don't take our schools, don't take our schools, and we don't want to go to, we don't want to be integrated. They don't want us. We don't want them. Mm-hmm. So it's a look at that, and it's done well. I've gotten a lot of compliments on it, book signings, and a lot of things like that.
That's super, and they can go to your blog and be able to or they can
they can click on a button, and it'll take them right to Amazon, and University of Kentucky Press sells it, Amazon sells it, and so but they can get a link on my website to those books.
And the other book is about the post Katrina experience at University of New Orleans.
Right. That was my 7 years at the University of New Orleans as athletic director, which I had said early on was the most fun job I ever had, because you're not dealing with $1 zillion athletes whose personalities are set, and for better or worse, they are what they are. You're dealing with young men and women, student athletes, most of whom would never have the opportunity to go pro in anything but the rest of their life, which was important. But then in 2004 or 2005, obviously Katrina slowed us down, as it did everybody else. And that's just the story of how the University of New Orleans adapted to Katrina and the aftermath, which the title is Where the Water Kept Rising. It's like even after the storm, the water just kept going up and up and up, and to the point that, we were trying to find air, and it was very difficult.
Yes, it was. Absolutely. Listen, thank you. I really do appreciate your taking your time and joining us. We'll be putting the video in segments up on Bayou Buzz, the transcript of the segments we put up in the video. It'll be up on Facebook. The video itself will be up on every page on BayouBuzz.com. So we really appreciate your taking your time, and look forward to you sending your column to us so we can put that up too. So thank you again. Really, it's some great.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate the opportunity. I appreciate what you've done for me, and for just your show is just terrific. It strikes the chord, strikes Louisiana what we should know about what's going on around here, and I appreciate that.
Well, thank you. I'm going to push some buttons real quick.